No.
It's so true. I took a couple
Okay.
for each one of them next week.
I didn't have a chance to look at it, but I will now.
I'm pretty bad as it is. It's got worse.
Unless you just don't.
All set? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Nantucket Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, September 11th. And before we begin, I'd just like to have a moment of silence for the members of 9/11, for all the victims and families for that. Thank you. And starting our meeting, I'd like to introduce members of our committee. On my right, far right, or on the left of the screen, Joe Grouse, John Tiffany, David Worth, Jim Kelly, Christy Kickham, Craig Sperry, and Steve Morey. Cliff Williams is not in attendance yet. This meeting is called to order. Is there any public comment on anything that is not on our agenda this afternoon? Okay. Hearing none, I would like to take one item out of sequence on the listed agenda just because one of our town manager has to leave early, so we'd like to have this discussion first, and that is the discussion for the upcoming budget process for the annual town meeting. And Libby, do you have any comments you'd like to make on that?
Only that we've begun preliminary work on developing fiscal 16 projected revenue. We reviewed that information with the Board of Selectmen at their meeting last night. We have developed a timeline, which I think members of the committee have.
We do.
And we're getting our budget instructions out by probably not next week, but the week after. They are unlikely to be too different from prior years.
Okay.
And you'll get a copy of that. I don't think our process is expected to be very much different than it was last year. We incorporated a number of suggestions that the committee had prior to the development of the fiscal 15 budget. We'll do those same items again. And unless there's any other suggestions, recommendations, things like that, we'll proceed pretty much how we went last year.
Okay. Any comments on the upcoming process? Now, I did send...
Yeah, Matt.
Oh, John, sorry, that's your hand. Yes.
Libby, I was looking over your final presentation to the Board of Selectmen on 2014, and there are just a few things that at some point in time, in the budget process, it raised some questions.
Okay.
So I just like, I have no idea what that process looks like, but I think when we get into it, I'd like to at least spend a little bit of time going over those so that we can get familiar with, where we ended up in 2014 as well. I know you're projecting 15, but I think we invariably get back to 2014 when we start to look at the budget for 16.
Sure. If you have particular items that you're talking about, why don't you let me know what they are? I can talk to you after if I email or we have a phone call. Or
I think
what you're talking about?
I just thought it might be a good idea to have in maybe one of the first sessions we have that we could just go have. I'm sure you can answer all of them right off the top of your head. So I just.
You mean just sort of how, like end of year 2014, how we ended up with expenses and revenues, end of year reports, that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
and there's some variances there that are just some interesting ones. Very positive ones in many cases, but just want to know what they are. So.
Sure. You can figure that out.
Okay, so we'll have that as an agenda item for our next meeting. And if you have specific ones, could I see a copy of them or you send them?
I didn't complete it for today.
No, you don't have to today, but could you let me know?
I just, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll put that for a future agenda item there. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Libby, I just, uncharacteristically, going over the expenses, I've got to give you high marks for expense control. So.
Uncorrect.
Uncharacteristic.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much.
That's the last time I expect.
Repeat that, John.
Okay, that it, John?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so I think we're running along the budget then.
Thank you.
That's
I'm
good.
sorry to leave you a BOS meeting.
Okay. All right, we want to, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks for letting us take that out of order. The next item is discussion and approval of minutes from meeting on July 7th, which we did receive. Any questions or comments on those? Okay. Hearing none, I will ask for, okay, a motion for approval is a second. Comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Committee reports. So that I do not have anything. It's been, from my end, pretty quiet. I believe there is an ad hoc budget work group coming up. Martin, is that correct?
Yes, September 18th, Thursday at...
September 18th.
Yes. in Nantucket.
Thanks for letting me know. Okay.
Tomorrow, there is no packet.
Right.
No agenda.
Okay.
Very preliminary, we are very early in the budget process, so that's all that's on this.
September 18th. All right, there we are. Okay. That's it. We did have a meeting, it's been so long, with the audit committee back in July, and everything is moving smoothly ahead. The auditors will be here, I believe, early next month for their 2 weeks session. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? October 6th. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. That's it for me. Any other committee reports? Okay. All right, then moving along to item number 5, it's a presentation and discussion of potential land issues regarding Nantucket Cottage Hospital and Town of Nantucket in preparation for the annual town meeting next year. Yes, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, I'm an employee of Nantucket Cottage Hospital. I'll be recusing myself from these conversations.
Thank you.
Mr.
And you as
Chairman,
well.
on the advice of town council, I am recusing myself from this discussion.
Make yourself comfortable in the audience. That'll apply. And I guess to start this discussion, I see a nice crowd here, and who would like to take charge in presenting? I see Dr. Hartman, right, and Mr. Carp. Okay, thank you. And if you wouldn't mind introducing, just for all the members to know.
Certainly.
All right, thank you.
Margot Hartman, physician and president and CEO at Nantucket Cottage Hospital. And I have our board member, Mr. Steve Carp, who is on our board of trustees, as well as our board chair, Michael Roberts.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you. And take your time and take it away. We're all ears.
We're grateful to have the opportunity to address the Finance Committee around our hospital and the momentous time that we're engaged in. This really is all of our conversation. It's a community conversation like no other, perhaps. I've worked as a physician in the hospital since 1999, and then moved into an administrative role almost 4 years ago. And I can tell you that there is nothing more real for this community than what happens in that building. And we have a charge, all of us, to determine how to create the hospital of the future. When we looked at, the board gave me the extraordinary opportunity of being in this position in 2010, we were in a significant amount of trouble. We were losing $8.9 million out of a $33 million budget. And the charge to us as a management team from the board was find a sustainable business model for this hospital. And we've done a lot of work to try and realize that over the last 3.5, almost 4 years. We created 3 buckets of understanding about how to approach it. We looked at our problem as a problem of decreased volume, decreased reimbursement, and a failing building. And we have addressed every one of those with the most passion and understanding and leveraging the best minds that we could. We have approached the community to find out what they needed us to be in a marketing study. We have realigned our service offerings and have found that the community has responded by bringing us their trust and their business. And we've, in fact, been able to grow our business while reducing our costs. For example, our lab costs we've been able to reduce by 40%. And we've seen our operations improve to the point where we're holding to budget this year and are on budget to lose just under $1 million from operations, and we will be cash positive from philanthropy, and have an opportunity, therefore, having gotten a grip on our business, having understood our reimbursement in a way that I think we didn't before, to then turn to, at the same time, what are we going to do about our failing building? A building that is costing us more than it should and more than is operationally sustainable in the future. And also a building that is not supporting, I've watched it really over the 13 years that I was a physician there become less and less and less able to support gold standard care. We are delivering gold standard care, but at a greater and greater cost, both in terms of just literally financially in order to accommodate the challenges of the building, but also in hidden ways. Our ability to recruit and retain staff is dramatically impacted by the quality of space that we can offer to a professional to bring their A game. Just something simple like the most wonderful technology of telemedicine. Really a terrific modality for a little hospital like us, remote, affiliated with an academic medical center where some of the best medicine is practiced in the world, and yet unable to be telemedicine capable throughout the building in a way that we need to be. So we didn't ask for this charge on our watch, all of us, some of us more than others in this room, but really all of us. It's all of our hospital. But it is ours, and we have an opportunity to really look to the future. If we come from a fear-based or small-minded way, we'll miss the mark. We have an opportunity to do something really extraordinary for the next generations. And so we're grateful to have the opportunity to bring that to your consideration. We looked at initially building on the site that we currently own, which is a 5.7-acre site, as you know. And we designed a building, a flat roof building that will require a helipad on the roof, just because logistically it's really extremely, I use the word Mickey Mouse and I'll use it here, for us to be having a helicopter land in the middle of a parking lot, having a significant group of people from the staff stop whatever they're doing every time a helicopter lands, go out, go through the back of every pickup truck, make sure there's no loose debris that's going to get sucked up into the rotors and challenge the safety of the whole process. It's just not the way to go forward. And then we also looked at the capacity to build on a site that and whether it's prudent to build on a site that we're already outgrowing. We've been able to grow our business to the point where at certain times of year parking is a severe challenge. And the question is whether it really makes sense to invest the kind of money that it's going to require to build the hospital this community deserves on a site that we're already outgrowing. So having looked at that, we retooled with the advice of members of our board and people who understand the due diligence of the questions that need to be answered and asked, with the assistance of some extraordinary expertise, some of which is in this room. And we determined that we would look for other land. And I'm going to actually turn to my colleague, our trustee, Mr. Steve Park, to take the committee to the next step of this conversation.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to move over here so I can address.
Make yourself comfy.
better. Oop. First, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to our presentation. Obviously, we've had some other presentations recently, 2 meetings with the Board of Selectmen. There were public meetings. Margot, for over a year, has been going, meeting with community groups, talking to them about the need for a new hospital and the potential of finding a new location for the hospital, and a lot of the other things that we'd like to talk to you and present to you here today. I must say that the rumor mill in Nantucket, you're never going to underestimate what the information that comes out of it will be, and how a lot of the facts have either been distorted, unknown, or unwilling to be known. So what I'd like to do is be able to clarify some of the things we're thinking about, and some of the things that hopefully you'll be able to ask us some questions about. At the back of this presentation that we'll do you, there's a group of questions and answers of the most asked questions to us and the things that you're probably thinking about yourself. And I hope, after we have a chance to make the initial presentation, you can look through those and they may answer some questions, and obviously would be available at any time to come either back here or individually to talk to anybody that may have questions that arise out of what we're going to talk about today. Margot talked a little bit about why we couldn't build on the existing site, and there are renderings in the book of what it would look like, and we could show them up there, but I don't think it's necessary unless you want to call it to your attention. But the alternative site development that we looked at and we eliminated for certain reasons, and we asked the town to also look and see what other sites would be possible. And Andrew Gorse submitted to this Board of Selectmen a group of alternative sites, and a lot of them, for one reason or another, wouldn't work. We looked at an existing site combined with 47 Prospect Street. We looked at a site that was combined at the existing site with the Severance property, the Goin Village. We looked at the Valero site, the Glowacki site on Old South Road. We looked at 20 Dafkin Lane, and we looked at an airport parcel. All these sites were either identified by us or identified by the town planner as potential sites that may be large enough in order to have a hospital of the size that we need. And I'll get into the details of that as we go along. There's a picture up there, and it's in your book of what these sites are, and we have an explanation in the back of the reasons why. I think it's page 29, I think, and 30, but you'd have to go through the details of that until later you want to be specific about anything what we look at. A preferred alternative site is the Wyers Valley site, the water company site as it's known. It's centrally located near the island's population. It's right at the Rotary, as all of you know. That's kind of the center of where everything comes together on the island. It's not that far from the existing hospital. It's within walking distance of retail. It has more roads coming into that location than any other location on the island, so almost anywhere on the island that you're coming from, you have access to coming to a hospital in an emergency situation. In addition to that, there's more bus opportunity to be able to have transportation that comes to this site than I believe anywhere else in the island, because all the different routes seem to come together right in this general area of the hospital. So I think that's some important things. We did a traffic study. We hired traffic consultants, and the traffic consultants did it at times during the summer when it was really as busy as it could be, during the winter when it wasn't as busy. Other locations took some statistical information that was given to them, and have come up with a plan, and has actually been submitted to the state for the potential funding for some improvements that would include a new rotary and some other improvements that we go over the details of when we go over the plan. So that if you go to the next slide, which is page 11 in your book, that shows a green area with the building in the side of the green area. I'll give you some statistics. There's been a misconception that we've asked for 20 acres of land. Actually, if you look at the dotted green line that goes from Pulpus Road over to Amelia Drive, and you look down to the Rotary, that's actually about 20 acres. That isn't what we're looking for. The reason why there's some confusion is there are a bunch of shallow wells in that area. That's the area between the green area and the dotted line. And those shallow wells are now going to be 2 deep wells. And the deep wells will be further up on the site where you see the location to the right of that, where there's a deep well already on the site. So that there no longer would be need for the shallow wells, and the shallow wells, the state would prefer that they had the deep wells, and have been asking the water company to eliminate those shallow wells in the future. And they have some plans to do that. And I'll get into a little bit of the detail about that if you'd like. If you took the green area, you'll see some green lines along the outside of the site, but that's a buffer zone that we don't intend to take the vegetation that's around the site. And then right by the Rotary, there's a big green area between the parking and the Rotary. And that area is a detention basin for the entire site. And it's not property that we need or want. It's the drainage location for the site. And so the hospital only needs about 7.5 acres, 7 to 7.5 acres, not the 20 acres that's been reported. Some of the selectmen asked us to look at some other, by the way, the new building would be about 100,000 square feet on 2 levels. The reason why this site is ideal, and we'll have a rendering at the end to show you, is because the grade on the site is such that you could have the entrance of one level at one grade, the entrance of another level at the other grade, and the ambulances could come around and go at the lower level and not be interrupted by the population that's be coming in for their appointments and other things that they'll be doing at the hospital. So that's kind of important. And the next slide kind of picks up on the reason why this is such a centrally located site. When you really think of how many roads access this site, it's about as many as any other location you could possibly get. And it is the most roads coming to any location anywhere on the island. If we could go back to the slide before it on number 11, you'll see that in this particular plan, the Rotary has been fixed with some improvements of capital that would be coming from the state at no cost to the town. And at Fairgrounds Road, there's another Rotary, and that would be the main entrance coming into it. There was a misconception that Milestone Road would be the main entrance. That's not accurate. That the secondary entrance, and primarily for ambulances and secondary access coming into the site. If people were coming down Pulpus Road, or they were coming down Milestone Road, and there would be easier access to come into the site before they actually ever get into the Rotary. So it actually creates less traffic coming into the Rotary at that particular location. So I'll try to move on to some preliminary financial considerations on page 13. We'll move to page 14. In partnering with the water company, originally we went to the water company, and frankly, the first meeting I had with the water company, I didn't think, that we would even have any interest in them talking to us about a piece of land for a hospital. But the reaction surprised me in that they said that it's an opportune time to come to them because they really are thinking about getting rid of these shallow wells and having deep wells. And by doing that, it would open up some land. It would be an opportunity. And that they feel their mission is, and they've been told that their mission is, that they have to create something for the health of the community, and nothing could be more of the health of the community than the hospital. And that's what they told me, not what I told them. So I left the meeting quite surprised that they would actually entertain the idea of having a hospital on the site. Subsequently, their board voted to continue meeting with the hospital and to encourage us to take a look at putting a plan together. And they voted that they would support the hospital on that site, on the land on the site that shows on the plan. And in the negotiation and discussed with them, they've requested that we pay $1.5 million towards the 2 new wells that they would need, would be the deep wells, and approximately $2.5 million for the construction of a new water company offices. We would have to disturb on the current plan, the current office location. We haven't looked as to whether or not that could be moved to another location and rather than stay at that location. But if you had to build it new, that's an estimate of what it might cost to build it new. So the next thing we looked at is, what are the tax impacts of all the things that we're looking at here? Obviously, the Wyers Valley site has no tax status because it's owned by the water company, and that it currently doesn't pay any taxes as a result, so that the property would eventually be kind of neutral from a tax point of view. And then the existing hospital site would become available. There's a lot of discussions on what could be put on that site. And the rumor mill is, again, has been, quite prevalent in coming up with things that are either real or not real. On any piece of property, there is a group of people that would prefer to have nothing on it and have a park. Then there's a group of people that always want to have a school on the site. There's a group of people that think there should be housing on the site. Right now, there is a plan that you could put 30 lots on the site. It could be a subdivision on the site. The plan's already been done, and it was done before we even got into this particular situation. And that would create an excess of $30 million in real estate tax value for the town on a piece of land that currently has no value. And we think that the quality of the housing could be good quality of the housing. There are other people that have come to us and said that they think that it should be denser than that. There's an opportunity to do more dense housing, and that's a consideration. But the truth of the matter is, it's really up to the town and what they want. And when they decide what kind of zoning they want on it and get the zoning on it, it'll help create the value of it. But we're thinking at the very least 30 lots would be in the neighborhood of $10 million is the value of it. So the benefits to the town would be that if we had $10 million value, that we could sell the property off. Everybody says we're asking for this land for nothing. We're not asking it for nothing. We actually have a very sound proposal that we'd like to talk to you about, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to come to the Finance Committee, because we thought it was the appropriate place to discuss this. But we have suggested normally when there's an endowment at a hospital or an endowment in a college, there's somewhere between 4 and 5% of that endowment that would go back into the operations of the facility. What we're suggesting is that the 4 to 5% that would be agreed to would go into the opportunity to create a community board. So the board would be people that would be year-round residents. The committee could be decided so that maybe a member of the Finance Committee, a member of the Board of Selectmen, hopefully somebody, and we're suggesting someone from the hospital, and then people that citizens that have some interest, they would be appointed by a group probably formed by the selectmen, so that there would be a well-rounded community look. And if you did that, it could be $400,000 to $500,000 a year that could be used for different services. And we're suggesting that those should be services that are health-related services. For example, and I made a short list just for things to discuss, is to support the behavioral and mental health issues, which there's a lot of. And if, let's say, you wanted to hire another person who specifically was in that area, and this group decided that was one of the priorities, and let's say it cost $100,000, then annually they could take $100,000 of the $500,000 that's coming in. They could designate it for that particular use, and then that would be a win-win, because you would take a need that existed already. You'd take a cost that may probably wouldn't be able to be reimbursed by anybody, and it'd be available to use it. If people on the island, for example, couldn't make a copay, and they could go to this board and they could say that we can't afford a copay, or we can't afford the particular procedure, but it's a necessary procedure, and we need $10,000 or $1,000 or $500 or whatever it happens to be. The $500,000 part, that group could listen to what it was, they could make a decision, they could allocate the money, and then the money would be used for the year-round residents for something that they may not be able to afford right now. If there are specialists that are needed on the island for some particular reason in the medical field, and the hospital can't afford it within their budget or whatever, but it seems like it's something that even outside of the hospital that could be used to be supportive of something that's being done that involves healthcare, then they could take some of that capital and use it. So we think that $500,000 a year could go a long way. If you're thinking at the 4 or 5%, and you're thinking about a 5 cap rate and 20 times the $500,000 a year, you're talking about a $10 million value that effectively would be paying. So for the land, so it's not exact. Yes.
So, Mr. Clark, why wouldn't the hospital just pay the town $500,000 rent for the property instead of? Again, I don't understand the real estate transaction, but it does. One thing that struck me in reading the presentation was there was no discussion about the cost of all the other locations, whereas this particular Wyers Valley, as I understand it, you were hoping the town would turn the land over to the hospital or convey it in some way.
Okay,
and maybe that's a naive question, but
well, I mean, this is a way to pay $10 million for the land. Okay, and the reason why I suggest this may be a better way to do it from the point of view of the town. There's a real question on who paid for the Wyers Valley land, and the ratepayers actually paid for it, not the town. So that if we paid for that, the question is, does the money go to the ratepayers or does the money go to the town? So we try to come up with a formula so the town and the year-round residents of the town would have a pot of money that they could use on an annual basis that would work a lot better, and there wouldn't be any conflict between was it the ratepayers or was it the town that was entitled to the capital.
Any further questions? We'll wait till after the presentation. Yeah, and also just all questions go for the chair too, and we always might get the presentations complete.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. No apologies necessary.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, because it's come up several times, is our island home, and it's been suggested that by some of the selectmen and others in the community that we take a look and see if there'd be room for our island home to have a new location on this particular site. If you go back to the plan, and we don't have to get into too much details of it, but it's on page 11, that the red areas, either one of them would be large enough for an island home if that's what the community wanted to do. And it could be contiguous to the hospital on that site. It would be a town. The town would continue to own the island home because the hospital couldn't possibly operate it because of a lot of issues, including union issues. And so would be in a position where we could talk about doing some services that we could share with them that would bring down the cost of operating the island home. Materials management, laundry, food, nutritional services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, laboratory service, medical director, and things of that type. And that would be a negotiation, but it would be up to the town to make a decision that they want to have the island home moved. And if they did have the island home moved, it opens up another location that either could become a tax benefit to the town if it was a retail site, or if it became land, the money from the location would go into the coffers of the town. So it would be a plus because they wouldn't be paying anything for the land over here that they would be moving to, because all that would be absorbed in the price that we're working out with this formula that I suggested. So So if you kind of put all the things together, okay, if it, if we pay the $1.5 million to replace the existing wells, and we pay something, and we said $2.5 million. I hope it is less than that for a new maintenance facility. That's an indirect benefit to the town. And then if we have $400,000 to $500,000 in payments that I suggested, and then there's taxable land at the existing site. So if you took 30 residential homes, age 19, and so did the median sales price for one family home in Nantucket of $1,115,000, it would generate approximately $125,000 in real estate taxes at 3.76 of taxes per 1,000 of value. So it's, that's just an estimate, it's just a suggestion, but I'd say that's on the low end of reality, and I think it could be more beneficial actually than that. And these locations obviously would be walking distance to a lot of the community, and I think it's something that is an interesting part of the proposal. And obviously, if the island home gets on the site, I've expressed why that might be a good thing. And in all these things, if you lay them out and everything, there's no loss of taxable land in any of the proposals. Now, what's the anticipated process? What's the permitting path on page 20? We need a lot of local approvals, as you can imagine. Any use of the land by the hospital would have to be approved by the voters of Nantucket at a town meeting. Originally, there was some confusion that they thought that we could make a deal directly with the water company, which was never our intention, and we always said that we were going to go to a town meeting. There was some pressure to go to the town meeting in the fall. At least one selectman suggested that we should have a fall, ask for a special town meeting in the fall. We don't think the entire community knows what the package is, understands why we want it, understands that there aren't a lot of alternative sites, understands the need for a new hospital and the reason why we need a hospital of this size, and all the other things that hopefully we're explaining to you today. So we're in a kind of in a situation where we always said that we're going to go to a spring town meeting. We hope to have the support of the Finance Committee, a majority of the Board of Selectmen, and the Planning Board. And the Planning Board has already said that indirectly, and at some of the public hearings we already had, some of the participants on the Planning Board have been very interested in seeing that the hospital that you could create on this site, I'll show you a rendering of it when we conclude this, is more in keeping with what the hospital should look like than if you had a building in the existing site. It would be flat roof and had helicopters landing on it, and it's out of character with anything else that's on the island. So we could get into the details of that if you want. We need a rezoning of a commercial neighborhood zoning district consistent with recent zoning efforts. We need a creation of a hospital sub-district to focus on the unique needs of the hospital, including the potential for expansion and related healthcare services. Healthcare services are changing so quickly, and ideas are coming up all the time. So we don't really know what it's going to be 5 or 10 years from now. So we need to build in enough flexibility so that whatever it's top of the barrel, so to speak, of what's being done nationally, we'll be able to do it on Nantucket. And we need a land restriction to assure health care use. Some people say, well, what happens if the hospital no longer operates there, or the hospital is no longer a hospital, or the hospital is in financial trouble, or something like that? There's nothing. We'll protect the town so that the use has to be the use that the town wants, which would be to have a hospital on the site, and no other use could be a use that you could be able to put on the site. So that could be done with restrictions. The vegetation of the buffers around it, there's a lot of people concerned about, could be built right into the zoning. And so some of the things that people are concerned about, access, location of the access, egress, et cetera, would be built right into the zoning. So it couldn't be something you could willy-nilly go out and change. Now the state is very interested, obviously, in something this size. And Milestone Road actually is a state road. And so we have to file an ENF, an environmental notification form, which is pretty much prepared and ready to go. As soon as we have the indication that we should go ahead with it, and we're working with a lot of the community leaders on that, including some of the selectmen. We need to do some coordination with the state of some of the timing issues and some of the permitting issues that need to be done. And obviously the well location, we need coordination with the DEP. And we've already talked to them about it. They're well on board, and we don't see any problem with that going ahead in the future. So next steps, okay, the anticipated timeline. We need to coordinate with the selectmen on the process and the collective goals of the hospital and the town. We've already started doing that, 2 public hearings. I think that at the second public hearing, they asked for public comment, and they asked people to come in and have problems, and 90% of the people made speeches about how important it was to have a new hospital. And by the end of it, a lot of them finally understood why we ended up in this location. And any time you pick a location that's controversial, obviously going to have people speaking against it, but there were far less people that showed up. That may not be an indication of public sentiment all over the island. But in the public hearings, and it was televised twice, that was the indication. We need to coordinate with the water company on the well location related issues that I've already talked about, and that's pretty much been done, and the engineering's already been started. We need to coordinate with the planning department and planning board on potential zoning issues. That's already been started. We plan to have a meeting with the planning board, but we've met with the planner on every step of the way. Town planner, and he's been supportive, including working out language with us that would protect the town in zoning. If in fact this went to town meeting, because the town meeting would have to not only approve the transfer of the property, but also would have to approve the new zoning on it. We need to coordinate with the HDC and the Finance Committee, as you can see, and that's one of the reasons why we're here. We're going to continue public outreach and dialogue for the need of not just this particular site, but the need for the new hospital. Margot has spent so much time meeting with so many groups, and many of us on the board have continued to meet with these people individually and in groups, and try to educate them as to the need for the hospital, but also why this is the location that we think is the best location for the hospital. We need to continue the coordination with the state on permits and a lot of due diligence that has to be done when you get into the real deep. And then we have to identify the timetable for an annual town meeting. If you go to the next page, on page 22, it shows a rendering of what the building could look like. I mean, this is obviously not a finished product, but it'll show you the grade breaks. If you're coming from Fairgrounds Road and you entered, that's just what it would look like. It would be one level on the front, in keeping with the architectural integrity of the island, and 2 levels in the back. If people coming in and have in an ambulance, they'll go directly to the back. They'll be able to get into the lower level, and they'll be able to not interfere with what would be going on here. On the site plan, as you see, there'd be parking in different pods. We probably have, as one selectman said, more parking than we need. We know we don't have enough parking in the existing sites, but we're taking a look at that and seeing if we have the right number of parking on the particular plan. I've given you kind of an overview of why we think it's really important. One, why we're here today. 2, trying to say that there really is a financial plan there that we hope the Finance Committee will think about and support, that we're not asking for anything for nothing. Why it's important that this site is the best site to be able to do this. Why this site would be a catalyst for a lot of improvements around the road if the hospital was built here. And then the rest of your packet frequently asked questions. And I'll take another hour if I go through these. So, but I'm trying to answer as many as I can, and I answer anything that you'd like me to try to answer right now. But I hope, when you leave, you'll take the time to kind of peruse this a little bit. And if there are questions that aren't answered here, or you're not satisfied with the answers here, or you need more information, we'd be more than welcome to be available to try to do that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for a very thorough presentation. I would like to go ahead and open up for questions from the committee members, if any. Oh, Chrissy. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for that, by the way. It's nice to be informed on that process. Just a few questions. Mass General, what's their role in this whole project, and how will they be involved? How will the community see Mass General into this process? Will there be any role that Mass General is playing? Just curious.
So as an affiliate, but we have our own board. We have a 21-member board. 4 members of the board of 21 are Mass General staff, if you like, and the rest are entirely local. We rise and fall on our own budget, on our own annual report, and so forth. We have been able to leverage Mass General's assistance in bringing in clinical services over the last years. And I always think if I get my job right, we'll have the best of both worlds. We'll have world-class care, but delivered here. And that will continue to be true in a new building. We've been able to leverage the assistance of Mass General in terms of helping us think out how to plan a new hospital. That's quite an extraordinary undertaking. The responsibility for the next generations, and to get that right, to build not any more hospital than we need, but a smart building that will expand and contract with the seasons. And there are people who understand the regulatory environment, the DPH requirements, the capital project and architectural requirements, and so forth.
Okay. I get 2 more.
Go ahead.
Depending if all approvals go well, and what's the old site, or the current site, I should say, where the hospital is now? How would that be left? Is it not, depending on what we decide to do with it, or what happens with it, what the hospital decides to do with it? How would that be left? Like decommissioning that property? Would the building be razed? Would it be left in?
Let me try to answer that. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, the building wouldn't stay on the site. The site would have to be a cleared site. The intention would be to sell the site after the zoning was in place, so that we could calculate the value of it based on it, because that's part of the formula that we talked about on how the money would be available to have the annual gift to the town. So that hopefully that would be something that would be within the hands of the community to decide what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I have one more. Sorry, I didn't really. This is the first time I'm seeing this, so I can't get too deep into questions other than what I just heard. Looking at the site on page 11, the map that you had in your report. Just a thought here that Fairgrounds Road, and especially in July and August, does back up quite a bit. And I know now you currently probably have a lot of people driving through the hospital just to sort of bypass the high school intersection.
Yeah.
And it looks like if someone's coming down and wants to get over to Pulpus or Monomoy, that they would just be maybe traveling, they would probably travel through the hospital instead of going through the rotary and staying through traffic. Maybe one thing to consider would be maybe an access road in the back part of that property. Just, it would benefit the community overall, but it would also might give the hospital a few more access points. It might diffuse traffic to stay out of the hospital and leave it for hospital.
It's a great idea.
Let me. I don't like to, but we have that plan. When we talk to the planner for the town, there'd be a roundabout over by Amelia Drive. It would be realigned with Pulpus Road. There'd be a road they could go through, so it would keep people out of the rotary, and it would move everybody. Part of the confusion when I originally talked to the town about that plan is that they said, aha, you're really trying to grab 20 acres because that's the perimeter of the site. That's not our intention. If the town wants to do that, it's available to do that. and it'll be part of the potential of the project, okay, but we're not asking that for now. If the town wanted to do that, rather than having our access on Milestone Road at the high point, okay, we have our access over by Pulpus Road, and the traffic would actually work quite well if it did that with traffic study to show that it works.
Okay. So there's
It's a good idea.
So there's something in the line of that. It's sort of okay.
It's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions from the committee? John?
And it's not a question, it's something that we may want to discuss later. Looking at the partial justification of disposal of the existing land by saying you're going to add it to the tax rolls. To me, whether you build houses there or anywhere else, houses are going to be built based on demand, I assume, because we have other areas of the island where there is land that can be developed. So saying that we can take the value of the taxes that would come from building houses there, in my view, is probably, I struggle with that because of that, because we have a land bank, and every time a land bank buys land, you can argue that if that land is zoned for residential, then we are losing potential taxable land. If the land bank bought that land, for instance, we wouldn't be losing any taxable land, we just wouldn't be gaining any. The land bank's going to buy some land in the future. We all know that, because that's what they're charged to do, and they are financed to do. But I have trouble justifying that part of it by saying we're going to add these houses to the tax rolls when, whether you build them there or anywhere else in the island. The only way that would fly, in my mind, is if we had no more land to develop. And we do.
This is a question, okay? Because you're the finance committee. If the land bank, if it was zoned and the value of it was $10 million, okay, and the land bank bought it, they would pay $10 million for it, right?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, they have to pay whatever the value is of the land.
That's a reasonable assumption.
Okay, so the $10 million would still be available for us to allocate the funding to the town in the way I suggested it. I just gave you a formula if it's currently zoned for housing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not trying to change the zoning. There's a subdivision plan that was done several years ago that has 30 lots on it. So I just did the mathematics of what I think it may be. But if the town decided the land bank wanted that land, okay, and the town paid the hospital for the land, and then the hospital gave the money back to the town on an annual payment, the town comes out ahead either way.
Yeah, I was just referring to the justification of the disposing of it in a certain way by saying we're going to add it to the tax roll, because I just can't see.
Well, I mean, that's really not our choice. It's the choice of the town, because they're, if the land bank wanted to buy it and they go aggressively in buying it, I'm sure they'd figure out a way to do it.
Okay.
If the town wanted it, I'm trying to give you an idea of why I think the value and why I think from the point of view of the town, it would be better with a formula like this than directly paying for the land for the money.
Okay. Further questions? Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Carp. I didn't see it necessarily in your presentation, but is there an assessed value on the land at Wires Valley from the town?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it. This is the town-owned property, okay, so I doubt it.
Right.
But I haven't specifically looked at that.
Because
I mean, one of the things that that we looked at is since the water company controls the property, and the water company's already turned down the fire station and other things, okay, and Stop and Shop, among other things, to consider putting there. Without zoning in place and the restrictions on it the way they are now, and without going to town meeting and changing it and getting the support of the community, it really doesn't have much value, other than the value of being replaced with a well zone.
If I can...
And let me mention one other thing.
Go ahead.
August mentioned that. Okay, One of the other questions that comes up all the time is, okay, aren't you going to affect the well fields by building a hospital on this site? And the truth of the matter is, I can't quickly find it for you, but in here I have a plan. Okay, somebody maybe could grab the page and let me know what page it is. Frequently asked questions, because I think here it is. Okay. All right. So see the outer ring on the purple. Okay. So that's with the shallow wells. Okay. That outer ring is the ring of influence of the water supply right now. So that the lumber company, okay, and the Jeep dealership and the place where you get your registration, okay, is actually in two roads, okay, and the Nantucket Bake Shop and Fasaro's restaurant are all under the influence now, and you have no control over them. Okay? If we build a new wells, okay, you get into the smaller concentric circles, and then the influence is now within the control of the water company, because it's all within property owned by the water company. And effectively what it does is it puts the hospital location almost 1,000 feet away from where the new wells would be, which is no longer in the direct influence of the wells. Now, I'm not an engineer. This was done by an engineering company, but verified by the state and also by the water company, so that it actually is the opposite of what public sentiment seems to be, in that it actually improves the situation, not makes it worse.
And Craig, answer your question. I think we can find that information out for the town. So
Sure.
I'll look into that. Further questions?
I have another question. And I haven't seen anything other of the design than that mock-up there. Is there a basement? Are we going subterranean?
No, and then, if we had to do it on the existing site, we needed to put in a basement. And the way it laid out, one of the things that I think that Michael may have touched on was that one of the important things is to be able to build the hospital of the future, so that if you're at different levels, and you have 3 levels, you can't put things that are contiguous that should be contiguous. For example, if you have ICU beds and you have regular hospital beds and you have nursing staff that can go between them, if they're on the same floor and they're contiguous and everything, they work a lot better. If you have a lot of the services of people that are actually in the hospital, they could use the X-ray and other machines and the MRI, et cetera. I mean, it's handy to them on the same floor and everything. Sure. It's a lot more cost efficient in operating it. The basement is really, it doesn't work too well on three levels because of the contiguous space. The other thing people say is, why do you need such a big hospital? The new hospital is about 100,000 square feet. The existing hospital is chopped out as it is, and with the medical office building and the outbuildings, and you all know from there, it's about 70,000 feet. So you're talking about 30% more, but actually with less beds. There'll be less beds in the new hospital because you don't need all the beds. And that's correct, right?
And if we were to right-size the existing square footage for current DPH code, it would be about 130,000 square feet. So we're not looking to build that hospital. We're looking to build the smallest hospital that will do the job, and just a smart, innovative, new way of thinking about small hospitals.
And let me just add one comment to that. Okay. So just to give you an example, and it's one of the best examples. Okay, we have one operating room. Okay. Well, the DPH, when you build a new hospital, okay, if you're going to deliver babies in the hospital, you have to have 2 operating rooms. Because if somebody has a cesarean and it's an emergency, and it's already somebody being operated on, you need to have it. Okay, so that right there, that's a side differential that you can't do in the existing hospital. You can't have that same thing. It's the same thing if you want to have chemotherapy. If you want to have dialysis, all those things have a minimum amount of requirement that you have under the state code. So nothing's grandfathered. When you do the new building, you have to build it under the new codes and everything. So by the nature of trying to create the services, Margot opened an urgent care center this summer, and with great success. I mean, much better maybe than was originally projected. And she's figuring out how to staff it and how to make it work and everything. But for the first year, I think there was a great reception to it. That was something that wasn't even planned a year ago in the hospital. When we were planning the hospital, that didn't work on the site because it was too small. Now we have to find the space for that. We're going to try to keep it within the 100,000 feet. So there are a lot of things that make up making a hospital of the future and trying to keep it the size for it.
You got a follow-up?
Yeah, the reason I asked about if there was a basement at the Wires Valley site, because I know, I live in Mid-Island, the aquifers are about 25 feet.
Yeah.
I've heard in that area it's about 15, 16, is it somewhere,
Well, I mean,
10 feet?
It's one of the reasons, but not the only reason we stayed out of it. We went on 2 levels and couldn't do that on the other side.
Yeah.
A lot of the islands in the aquifer, there's water aquifer on almost any one of the sites that we consider that has an impact on it.
Thank you. Further questions? Steve?
What is the actual size of the parcel that you guys are looking for at Wires Valley? I see here it's 21.8 acres.
No, it's actually 7 acres. Okay?
7 acres.
If we're 7, maybe 7.5 acres. It basically is that we're not asking for that buffer zone around it, the green, okay? But because that's just existing buffer. Inside, where you see the parking lots in the building on page 11, okay? Okay, so see parallel to Milestone Road, there's a lot line and everything. Okay, well we'll keep up the buffer. The piece of land between the parking lot that's closest to the rotary and the rotary, that's a detention basin for the entire site. We don't want that, and we didn't ask for it. Okay, we just put it on the plan so people could see. Okay. The 2 parcels that are in the red, which is part of the so-called 20 acres, okay, we're not asking for that land, okay? What some of the selectmen asked us to do is to see if we could allocate a piece of land in a master plan, but not guarantee it. So if the island home or some other services wanted to move to the site, having nothing to do with the hospital, but asking about services that we would talk about doing for it, there would be available land to do it. And then, as I mentioned before, okay, if the town wanted to consider a road that would go from Pocus Road over to Amelia Drive, then there'd be along that the outside green line, it would still fit in within the zone that would be acceptable to the state. It would be far enough away from where the actual new wells are.
Yeah, so on this alternative site analysis, page 29, where it has preferred site and size, and it says 21.8 acres, that's incorrect.
What's that? What page are you on?
It's page 29.
And you're referring to the 21.8 in the want to comment?
Right.
Section?
Yeah,
Okay.
preferred site.
Yeah. That's what's available. It's not what we're asking for. I mean, that includes the entire parcel. We're not asking for that. That number should have been changed. That's what is available on that site, but we don't need all that.
I see.
And we're not asking for it.
Could make available.
Outside of the well zones, is what
Right.
you're saying.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think if the total is 48 acres for the whole.
Yeah, 35.
And I think that's been one of the confusing things that the Mayor picked up on and confused people because we never asked for all that property, but that's what the water company said would be available.
So 7 acres is the size of the parcel.
I think it's
sufficient.
7.5 or something, and I don't know. It's right in that range, but it's nowhere near the 20 acres. It's less than 8 acres.
Okay. So I didn't see, and I understand you can't spend a whole lot of time in a report like this vetting every alternative, but probably the most obvious alternative is what you have here is alternate 1, the existing site, and 47 Prospect Street. Can you just speak briefly about why that option was discounted? It seems like, I mean, I understand the construction would have to be right next to this building, and there's some issues there. but you have 12 acres to deal with. You have a similar topography.
What position?
That's alternate one, also on page 29. So that's the existing site with the addition of 47 Prospect Street.
I don't remember by the number 47 Prospect Street. Is that the? Is that
Mill Hill.
the mill? That's a park, I think, that's adjacent to it.
It's adjacent to Mill Hill Park, yeah.
Well,
There's
it's
a park course here.
I think it is the park.
It's part of the park, I suppose, but it's not, what people consider Mill Hill, I guess.
Okay, but my understanding is it's designated as a park. Okay, and in order to take a park out of commission, you have to go to the state legislature. Okay, and you would have to have a big enough parcel on that site to be able to put the new building on that, because the shape of the building and the shape of the other parcels, although they're contiguous, they don't work. And I could go into the detail and show you plans, because we're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
But it could take 2 years, and you wouldn't know if it went, this is my understanding, to the state, because once it's designated a park, it isn't easy to get rid of it. And it would have to first go to town meeting, which, there's people against taking a park. And then you would have to come up with land to replace that land. And so that if you didn't have the land to replace the land, you can't take the park. So if you're using part of the hospital site and part of that, you couldn't make a deal on part of the hospital land, because you wouldn't be able to have enough land to be able to satisfy everything. And so, it's complicated. We looked at it.
So there's a land court deed restriction, is what you're saying, on that Mill Hill Park?
It's designated a park, and it's a state. It takes the state in order to depark it, and you need to replace it with other land, is my understanding.
I see. Okay. And then I just had one more question.
Go ahead.
But I mean, obviously, we looked hard at all those options.
Yeah, no, I was just curious
yeah,
why each one was
yeah,
ruled out, and I don't want to ask about every one.
Yeah,
But you mentioned that the market value of the current site you estimate to be $10 million. I think it's probably significantly more than that. In your projections of what you consider to be a gift to the town, the 4 to 5% endowment that would be created by the sale of this property, it's limited at $10 million. It's 4 to 5% of up to $10 million of the proceeds.
Because I think effectively we're paying the town $10 million, and I try to just come up with a formula to pay for this piece of land, water company land, at a $10 million value. If we're fortunate enough to get more money, the hospital desperately needs an endowment, and to increase the size of the endowment. And if we could get some additional value of it, I'm hopeful that the additional value would be that it could be used for the hospital, because effectively it's going to be used for services for the community. But as Margot said, that you need your endowment and you need philanthropy in order to be on the plus side of the operating cost of operating a hospital that's so seasonal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what you guys would consider to be a hard number. That $10 million is as much as would be offered to this fund that it seems to me would be used for health services anyway.
Well, I'm suggesting that it wouldn't be controlled by the hospital; it would be money controlled by the community board that would be created, and that value would obviously have value to the people that are around citizens of the community. Mm-hmm. I think it's if we came and we said that we'd pay $10 million for the water company side, then you'd be hard pressed to get an appraisal anywhere near it.
Probably not until you did the rezoning, which is,
well, even if you have to rezone it for a higher and denser use.
Right, to the community neighborhood to
The
match the current
community
city.
wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
And the water company has already said that they wouldn't consider any commercial use in that property.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think that they can. I just think that you'll get more than the 10 million. But I understand that your analysis is such that you think $10 million is as much as.
I think it's more than generous, I guess,
Okay. All set?
Yeah.
Further questions? Okay.
The talk in the community comes up that, what about a land swap? The hospital gets the Wires Valley, and the town gets the existing site. Even trade.
Well, that's come up before. I would like to think of it in a way that if you appraise both sites, okay, the hospital would come in the short end of the stick because one property is worth a lot more than the other, and it's currently zoned. It's a different property, and then the question would be what would happen with it. And I think that the thing that people lose sight of, okay. We're not asking to build a new Stop and Shop. I mean, this is the one hospital for this community. Okay? And if this hospital is profitable or can break even or do well or bring more services and stuff like that, it's the people that live here year-round, the people that come here during the season and everything, that benefits from it. It's a non-profit. There's many things that have been done in this town for the benefit of nonprofits where there's been no money allocated, okay? So I think we're trying to be as overly generous as we can without jeopardizing, the operations of the hospital.
Further questions? Hearing none from the committee, I'd like to open it up to the public or anyone who has any questions or comments. Yes, sir. And you just introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Cormac Collier from the Nantucket Land Council. I'm going to save critiques of the project. I think there's going to be plenty of time in the future for that.
Yes, there will.
I just want to have just a quick comment, and I do get frustrated, obviously, from my background with the Nantucket Land Council, how there's somewhat of a cavalier attitude that there's no water quality impacts, and that's that. And we didn't really see any detail in terms of the water quality today. The only detail we did see was actually the map at the last page. And that map is actually wrong. It wasn't described correctly. That map is not the zone A of the existing shallow wells. If you have the existing shallow wells, actually Bob Gardner has the correct map. It does not include Don Allen. It includes a small portion of the island number. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that they're giving you information which is actually incorrect. And when it comes to water quality, we need the most correct information possible. Also, when they said that their retention, they didn't need the parcel between the hospital and the section of land between the proposed hospital and the rotary, because it would be a retention bed. Well, that retention bed is for all the impervious stormwater runoff. They need to own that retention bed. So they need to clarify exactly how much land they're going to have or want or not. No development can essentially have their stormwater runoff on another parcel. It has to all be contained on property that they own themselves. And in terms of operation and maintenance, I certainly would want the retention beds owned by the hospital so they could actually maintain the infrastructure appropriately.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Would you like to respond to that, or just?
No. That was the information gave to us by professionals. I obviously didn't do it myself. I respect the comments that he made. We'll look into them. That we have done other developments in other locations within the state. We're doing one right now, 2 million square feet in Westwood, where the railroad train station is on 128. There's a major water supply for, I think, 4 communities right in the middle of the project. So we've been through this in quite detail. I'm sure, I'm not in a position, I'm not an engineer to debate. He's a highly qualified person that we have tremendous respect for. And obviously we have to satisfy all those things. And we can't go ahead unless, that the information that we do technically is the correct information, and we'll look at everything just suggested.
Okay, and just for you saying, and I guess, and I was going to save this to the end. This is the first in probably many discussions before this committee on this, and so information. I'm glad. I appreciate you bringing up these points because I we'll look into them, and I think that we will vet these out, and we'll find the answers so that when it comes time to go to town meeting or for a recommendation from this committee, we'll have all the facts.
Well, one of the reasons why we didn't want to go to a fall town meeting was just for that reason.
I understand.
You know, and
We appreciate
you know,
that.
and I'm hopeful that, you know, the information will be available
Mhm.
so the finance committee doesn't have to get involved in a whole discussion about, you know, water runoff and stuff. Okay, that, you know, the planning board, I'm sure, will take a big interest in that, and the town
Right.
planner, and, you know, and the other engineers, and the water company itself, so.
That's correct.
You know, but so, you know, hopefully we'll have plenty of time so the community will understand the answers to those questions.
We're all on the same page there. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I think you said that you had worked with the water company on this proposal, Bob Gardner. And so, the last time I knew, Bob Gardner was supporting what you want to do.
That's correct.
Okay. Have you talked to Bob Gardner?
Plenty of times.
Okay.
All right.
They're
We'll get this all, I think if Bob was here, it'd be helpful, but again, I'll go back to him.
Yeah, but we're breaking up today, and of course, people are going to be left with an impression.
I think the impression, I will ask, the impression be is that we will get our facts together, and we'll come out and we'll arrive at the proper conclusion. Okay? All right, further comments from the audience? Okay, well, thank you very much. I think this was very thorough and informative and illuminating. Our cycle for discussion of town meeting warrants will really get into gear in January, and so we will be in contact, and I'm sure you'll be in contact with us to move forward there, and I'm sure we'll be having these discussions again. If there is any questions or if you need to contact us, please feel free to contact me at any time. And I know Jim has been very helpful along those lines, too. Not as a member of this committee, but as a point person. So I want to thank you again, and we'll see where this goes, and best of luck. Very nice presentation, very thorough, very good. Okay. All right. All right, very good. Okay, so meeting. We will continue on with a. Well, wait a second. I agree, but that's they will. No, you're absolutely right.
What's that?
All right. Well, why don't we continue on? Item number 6 is discussion of the airport budget. On August 7th, you were forwarded the update that was requested at the last meeting, and I do want to give kudos or gold stars to both Tom Rafter and Brian Turbot and Martin for presenting a very thorough update, and frankly, even someone like myself could understand it very easily, so I want to thank you for that. And that being said, Tom, do you want to chat about it, or do you just want to go ahead with questions?
I apologize for missing the last meeting. I wasn't available for that. Before I get into anything, I'd like to introduce my new airport commissioner, Bruce Garin.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I didn't.
Bruce Garin.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry, the noise. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
So I'm just here, Matt, if you have any questions. I read the minutes, I saw there's some questions and concerns, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to.
Okay, well, why don't we just open up for questions? Any questions for any members?
I can kind of set the stage a little. You saw results from 14, where we're still unfortunately in need of a subsidy.
Mhm.
The good news is it went from 1.1 down to $300,000. And the other good news is that where we had anticipated using quite a bit of retained earnings in the neighborhood of 1.3, it's down to about $170-some thousand. So we're still working through some of the history and trying to organize our budget. As you know, there was very limited information we had to work from before, and we're hoping that we can improve the budget process, but again, our focus has been on the actuals. So.
Okay, very good. Questions for anyone? Wow. John? John and David, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Christie, I asked Tony if he was going to play paddles.
What?
We'll see about that.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
David, go ahead. Jesus.
I'm trying to get the stuff up in front of me, but
Yeah.
just some.
If that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Traffic, commercial traffic up, down. How's your passenger facility charge? You meeting your expectations, projections?
The operations are up slightly, employments are flat.
Commercial now, not just
Commercial.
private stuff.
Yeah, well, operations is everything, employments is commercial.
Okay.
So the employments are about flat. Fuel, I was telling Martin earlier, the gallons are down about 1%, but the sales are up 1%, so we're managing the margin.
And the price, okay, margin.
PSC to date, we've collected about $46,783, and that is not with all carriers reporting yet for 1 month. So we're anticipating about $60,000 to $70,000 in PSCs for the first month.
For a month.
I'm
And
sorry.
that's
How much, Tom?
We're anticipating 60 to 70. We have year to date 46,783.
That's for July.
That's for July. But not everybody's in, for example.
Right.
Air is reported yet, Blue hasn't reported.
Okay. Mr. Chairman? Yeah, you all set, David, before?
I'll come back.
Okay. Jim? Yeah.
The numbers you just quoted are from prior year or versus budget?
Which?
The employments being flat and then the
That's
calendar
year to date.
compared to prior year?
12-month, basically.
Okay, so it's compared to prior year,
Yes.
not budget.
Okay. Further questions?
So you're using 300,000, excuse me.
That's good. That's all right.
Are you using
Informal.
300,000 from your general fund subsidy?
We had to last year. So we're
Okay.
not anticipating to use any this year.
No, but when you closed out your actuals for fiscal year
14,
14,
we used the subsidy, yes.
okay. And I'm trying to remember, and I've got a
part of
real
that-
eye chart problem here, so
Part of that was, it's one of those things where it was in the budget from the way I look at the finances versus Brian and his group, they have to give us that money, or they gave it to us, so it's one of those things where it comes in and it's harder to take it back than it is anything else. In theory, if we could have taken that back, we would have just used more retained earnings, so it's half a dozen, 160 the other. So our fund balance is projected to be, I believe, was at $1.2 million roughly.
Okay. All set?
I think so.
John?
Yeah. On those, I'm talking about the 2014.
Yeah.
You said that your volume, and I want to talk about fuel sales. Your volume was,
For 14, it was up about 30,000 gallons. As a matter of fact, if you look to the bottom right, if you have this sheet,
yep,
it has the fuel revolver and the activity.
yep,
The good news was that the price of fuel was fairly reasonable that year.
it looks like you saved, you got it at a little cheaper price.
We got a little bit cheaper price, and when I say we're managing the margin, we're managing the inventory as well, as to when we're making our price changes. We're not waiting for the last minute, we're taking advantage of the flow of fuel.
Obviously, when you look at the budget, when you look at, if you look at the P&L, fuel has such a huge impact on the whole thing. Looking forward, as you're going away from here, just looking out to the budget we have for 2015 already in play, how do fuel sales look?
I think we're going to anticipate fuel is fairly flat. I don't see anything.
Volume-wise?
Volume-wise, I can't predict the price of fuel. But, you know, what we do is just keep an overhead on it so that we keep our margin there. What we're trying to do is not rely as much on the fuel. So we're looking at diversifying and increasing other rates. Maybe on some of the seasonal carriers, where we have some non-aeronautical land. We just completed the survey portion of the master plan, which has identified a number of parcels of land that can either be sold or leased or whatever. And we're going through that process with our commission to identify what our preferences are there. We have a number of parcels that we can get ready pretty quickly to lease out and start bringing in some additional income.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, fuel, I don't see a lot of movement in terms of additional income in fuel. So I'm looking at trying to diversify and add and, tweak the other ones we have.
Is that because you're in competition with?
Just strictly the volume that we can handle.
Okay.
Christie?
Tom, do you fuel any of the commercial commercial flights
We fuel all
over the winter?
Island and Cape.
Okay.
Some buy more than others.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons.
Is there a way to get more of that?
We made every effort to.
Yeah.
We instituted a very decent price program for what we call our signatory carriers, or year-round ones. In fact, I had a conversation with the manager from IANS yesterday, and he indicated that one airline is saying that we're charging less than they are, but yet they're not buying from us.
Okay.
Okay. Greg?
Tom, looking at the budget for fiscal year 2014 and the actual, revenues were about flat, it looked, but the expenses were down significantly.
Yes.
Is there a particular reason or something that stands out?
There's a couple of big chunks, one of which is utilities. We moved into our new building late, and if you recall last year I said the big unknown is going to be utilities until we get a handle on how that building is performing. So the fact that we moved in late, we didn't have to spend a lot on that. The other, we have had some fuel farm inspection and maintenance, about a $50,000 item that we deferred only because the company couldn't make it out within the fiscal year. So it's going into the next year. So some of it is timing. And a number of it, quite frankly, is, and maybe this is a little crazy, I'm looking to loosen up on it a little bit, but every single purchase order, we have a very thorough process that gets reviewed. It has to go to finance, make sure there's funding available. The superintendent has to justify it, and then I sign every single one, even for $19.62 for lumber.
Good. Don't keep it like that. You weren't here a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm making the superintendent up to a couple $100.
All right, you all set?
Thank you.
Further questions? Oh, John?
Yeah. What's going on in the insurance?
We had a very competitive price, and it was the second year. The first year, a company came in. It was too good to be true, and we did our due diligence from the town's insurance guru or council, whatever. We contacted other airports to verify, and they're all using the same company, and they just wanted the business and undercut the current one. In fact, the one that we had been doing business with for years called and said, "Can we have another chance to bid?" I said, "No, we have one chance. Let's give you the best price." And the same thing happened the second year. They couldn't get it as low.
That's a significant change.
It is.
Good.
That's why I was concerned. I want to make sure. that
You
all
kind of
our
wonder, are you
numbers-
getting apples and apples?
That's what I say, we went through, the town has a consultant or something that they use for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
We checked with them, we talked to the Vineyard, we talked to, I think Hyannis has them too,
Okay.
and everybody said, no, it's just same coverage, same limits, everything. So
Okay.
actually, it was better, believe it or not,
Mhm.
it was extended coverage.
Okay.
That's good. Good
There's
question.
more supply of insurance, aviation insurance coverage than there used to be. More foreign companies are coming in.
Interesting. Oh, you speak.
Now, I got another one.
Oh, another one? Go ahead, Joe.
Explain to me current year encumbrances, because What is that?
I can try, and I'm gonna rely on Martin to help me out more than anything else.
Yeah, I just want to know that.
As I understand it,
We didn't budget anything for it, so therefore, and yet
well, Martin, you wanna?
Martin, tell.
Currently, our encumbrances are at the end of the fiscal year, which closes on 30th of June. We have outstanding obligations, and these are the encumbrances. These are represented by encumbrances. For instance, we have utilities where we have encumbered, for instance, with the National Grid, $50,000-$60,000 for the June bill that is going to arrive in July, so we can pay. Or for any other contract-related issues, any other expenses that were incurred in June but will be paid in July. We have to have an open purchase order to be legally allowed to pay those expenses. If not, once the fiscal year end closes, once the fiscal year closes, not the fiscal year end, we have to go to town meeting to get approval to pay these bills because they relate to prior fiscal year. So for budgeting purposes, we put these encumbrances to make sure there are funds, and there is very specific regulations for them. They have to be for a particular vendor, particular service and product that has been ordered or received. We don't actually switch to receive in the coming fiscal year, within the fiscal year.
It's essentially a current obligation. You may remember a couple of years ago where.
It's almost as a liability.
let me ask you a different way. What you're saying then is that we've got 124,000. I think these are numbers. These numbers are awful small. Yeah, $124,000. That if we'd have paid everything, right? You know, everything that we owed as of June 30th, it would be up somewhere up above in one of those line items.
If we've incurred an expense.
So we may be looking at a line item up here that looks pretty good, but in fact, it's not quite as good because we pay.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand that.
That is correct, but also this year it was much tighter control, and you can see the difference between this year and the previous fiscal year. We worked very closely with airport, and actually from finance department perspective with every department or enterprise hub to make sure that the encumbrances were. We started 74 pages worth of open year-end encumbrances on June 30th. And by the time we closed the fiscal year, these were down to 30. So these were...
That's the whole town, I hope.
Yes. No.
As I say, wow.
Meaning, it's very tight management of those, because if we leave them open and the fiscal year end closes, they become part of the fiscal year 15 budget. Meaning they don't go into free cash calculation or retained earnings calculation.
They just roll over.
They just roll over into the next year's budget. So if we close them in the next year, after the fiscal year is closed, it doesn't fall into this year's calculation, it will eventually fall into
John,
next year.
are you looking for what these specific encumbrances are? I'm just curious what you're going to...
I'm just trying to identify what it is in general.
Okay. Are you okay?
He said, yes, I'm okay with that. I don't...
Good. That's why I want to be sure you're getting what you're looking for.
You might recall historically, a few years ago, there was 300+ thousand, I think, that went to unpaid bills. Because the airport didn't close out these things and didn't get the invoices in that people paid within that fiscal year-end close.
So when we compare from a budgeting point of view, the actual versus budget.
These don't get budgeted for.
That's right.
Encumbrances do not get budgeted for.
No. Therefore, it's off there in space.
Well, it's not because it's a charge against a line item here already, okay? So we rolled them in aggregate to the 124. Okay, so I understand what you're saying, John. You're saying that the 124 is a lump sum number, whereas these could be made up of any one of these lines that show a very positive surplus right now.
Yes.
So it could skew it a little bit. But this is not, these numbers, the 124 was still within the operating budget. We just rolled it this way when we printed the detail off.
Yeah.
So to your point, it is possible that, you know, let's just use this example, the 124,000 is all DPOs relative to administration.
Yes.
Which would make, right now administration has 175 as the unexpended balance, which if those were all administration would really make administration look like, you know, it in reality had a $55,000. So I do understand what you're saying, and we could certainly go back, identify those POs, and present this and give you the roll down. We chose to do it this way because I don't know how many POs they were, but these are all POs that were money that was available in the budget in those line items.
Yeah, I understand what it is. The thing I'm just trying to get making sure I understand. And the good news is you've got that number down to where in the past it's been fairly large. And if it is a large number, then it starts becoming, the larger the number, it starts becoming somewhat troublesome when you start to.
But like I said, it's going to affect the year-end calculation for paid earnings per year.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's just, when you're looking at line item budgeting, then it can be a little troublesome if it's large, yeah.
Joe?
So is that encompasses, is that an estimated figure, or is that those are invoices you know about?
It's not.
They just don't get applied to the identical departmental budget or whatever.
Right. Well, there are no numbers because what happens is the fiscal year ends on June 30th, and we have 15 days after the fiscal year to process all year-end bills. Okay.
Right.
Within that 15-day time period, the departments are entering for the cleanup warrant. Okay. These are POs that were issued either prior in June or on June 30th that the bills had not been received in order to be paid on the cleanup warrant, which is June 15th, or July 15th, excuse me. So in order to pay anything after July 15th, it had to have had a PO and been encumbered so that it could be discharged legally against that particular budget. So these are all known bills that the invoices hadn't been received by the July 15th cutoff.
Got it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Good.
Private business, you don't allow it.
You do.
Are there any further questions? Christie.
Tom, question on personnel. I know recently, maybe last year, your personnel flow chart changed somewhat. You have some superintendents that I know some of them, and they're all great people and great workers. But I'm wondering how you determined what that starting salary was. And I've asked this of other departments. It's just this thing I have where where they start off with, and sometimes I don't understand the formula.
It's a great question because, I'm working now with Don Jacobs to do what the town did so that we don't have to have this guessing game, if you will. But essentially what I did is I looked at the supervisor's level and just assumed a certain percentage above that because they're the next level in the code. So I just took a flat from the supervisor and added, I think it was $4,000 to $5,000. The challenge that occurred in the budget is we made certain assumptions that there was going to be, this natural growth, and yet through the interview process, one individual came from down in the line and stepped over and jumped up, came across very strong in the interview and was promoted to the superintendent. So it kind of skewed my projection.
Right.
And that's where it hurt me on the budget.
Are they all the same? So they're at the same level as that?
Two of them are the same. The maintenance one is slightly different, and the maintenance department is just slightly above operations historically. A lot of that has to do with experience and years in the seat.
Right.
One challenge I will tell you that we faced this past summer, was trying to get seasonal help. We made offers to 12 people, and we only ended up having 8 hired and show up for training. So it kind of hurts my overtime in the summer because we just got to get fuel out there. Even with housing, we offer housing, and we reached out to colleges. We're trying to do a better outreach this year. We're going to go down to Florida, try to get some FBOs that come out of a swamp or something. So.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. I think we're looking good for that. All right. The next item is the date of our next meeting, which will be determined. As far as I know, there is nothing on the horizon, but that could change if signatures are collected for a special town meeting.
Is there any rumor? I mean, I'm hearing.
I've heard rumors, but
nobody.
Well, I think it's clear in the hospital will not. Right. I have heard rumors about the funeral issue for land. Because you might recall, there was a home rule petition from a citizen's article about funeral homes that did pass the state legislature, so that the next step would be to see if the town would provide land, in essence, from what I understand. But that's all I've heard. A little more stronger is the Richmond company is considering the zoning article for the building cap. But you know, my conversation is, well, you better do it darn soon, because the schedule's already middle of November if they did it
So
now.
what's the statutory, if they come in?
65 days, I believe. So if someone comes in, I think it's 100 signatures for a special town meeting with an article on September 11th, you start the clock for 65 days. And the selectmen have to, by law, do that. But they haven't, so I'm not sure. But that's everything that I've heard.
There's some kind of cutoff at some point that if it's not done
You know,
by-
not really, not for a special. Now, you can have a special within an annual, which has happened before, but no, there really is not a cutoff. And well, I think I'll be honest with you, I have talked with the Richmond people and said, I think, you know, from my standpoint, I think you're making a big mistake if you're way the longer you wait. So just wait till your annual. But that's me. That's my, you know, that's not speaking from the committee. That's from my personal opinion. So, but no, that's answer your question. That's everything that I've heard, and it's rumors. So, but if that changes, I will. Once I know, I will certainly let everybody know.
So do we have a date for our next meeting?
We do not. But my guess, without one, probably I would say, just guessing, probably sometime toward the end of October.
Because I have an agenda item for the next meeting, whenever that is. Sooner the better.
An item?
An item.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know and consider it and go from there. Okay? So, but it's, yes, if something does change, I will let you know. Other than that, I think we're all set, so ask for a motion for adjournment. Second. Thank you. Second. All right. So everybody have a nice weekend, and go from there. Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah.
So how much is that?
Well, I was just on the numbers. Somebody's going to get 30 lots. There's already lots of I think they have buyers lining up to pay taxes. The opportunity to benefit.
Maybe not Tom.
More likely it would be apartment buildings in the commercial neighborhood district. You can have
Take this.
dwelling units.
And promptly give it to Danny. So I don't need it.
Yeah, it's owned in the CM, which is, I'd have to look at that. I think it's, yeah, I think we started getting on it. December schedule, a lot more than that. You know what?
Yes.
So, I can understand why a trustee would say, $10 million.
They're just they're being paid on July 18th or the next warrant. They're not getting paid John, at all. They're just I just can't get
What they've done is taken $300,000.
My only point is I certainly agree all of those things.
down to 124. So that's basically, if you think about it, any closer to private business, that's EP on their books. That's their account. That would be their equivalent of accounts payable, and then it gets cleared as we roll through. But we just showed it so that people would see what the number was. And since they had done it before,
I thought you said you'd name these bills that were on waterfront page or the first bill.
No, they're unpaid on the cleanup warrant on July 15th.
They go on page use if you don't have an open PR.
Right.
That's what I meant. They require town meeting approval.
No, I think they've done, I mean, I had no idea that was a real
That number comes down.
Right, which that all goes to retained earnings. When we keep that number.
So do we collect these or do we do anything?
We look at it, it's large, but it's
Oh my God! Talk about wires.
I know it's
Like, what the hell?
it's got so much.
It's like recording studio down
I know it.
which down there for my
Okay.
It's very common. Part of the music took you to some lot.
Oh, that's cool.
a couple of times and I forgot to follow up on it.
Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll come next week and
We should start working on a schedule.
I didn't want to.
let me talk to you about a second about something else.
I had a list of, ton of questions, but, you know, we're gonna have some time to sort those out.
This really isn't going to, from my view, wouldn't be the kind of somebody else people to the answers.
I spent quite a bit of time with Jim on this.
Well, you know what
I understand.
he was emails that answering my question.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But you don't mean,
even though you may know the answers to your questions, this is the format that you may not know the answers.
He's literally right across the street. He's right across the street. Yeah.
But he can't do this. I said, Jim, this can't be business as usual. This is too big a project. We just can't say, there's nothing to look at it as normal.
I'm not going to lose a fight.
No, I was in the town that was working.
Oh, Luke Gosh.
Somehow.
Is he the one you're talking about?
No.
Yeah.
Communication than just a normal income. That's why I said to him.
January, February?
20 days.
With the hospital, get a process maybe a little bit. What I find still think about these things, people get out.
you've got it now, let's see what can do. What's up,
Really not necessarily a list of
Well, then you have people like Corn, who's got an agenda, who's taking that time.
He represents a constituency on the island.
That's true.
And well, and beyond that, I talked to, they asked me, what do you think?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time with her. The thing that irritates me about some of the it's like people. I said, in Kelly's house.
And then you can go and have some of the, yes, the bonus.
No matter what goes on across the street, Monomoy from the start, Westland Road is going to always be Monomoy. Nothing's going to make people want to go down there if they don't have to go down there.
Because
Oh, I know, because I know he has.
I do too.
Sure they had,
Well, they have, because Bob's very frustrated over the fact that Monomoy talking about
Monomoy problem.
he may be representing constituency, but he's not doing it, quite frankly, in an honest way. But I think, Dave, I think the thing that Scott has figured is somehow this is going to require an extraordinary amount of time. Can't be business as usual.
hey, you should get one of these ice makers done. I was with them when that text came through.
Oh, were you in Florida? Were they in Florida?
No,
where were they?
we were in Newport Sailing.
Oh, awesome. They
You don't have to tell me. It's
No. It's 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 an old ice maker. I really honestly thought the tech was going to go over and be like, dude, that thing's like 20 years old. Like, guess what? He's like, oh, it's just a supply line that's faulty. Seal in the back or something that's all cracked. And it's just one of these. So, it'll be probably early next week. Jeff will have his rocks. His rocks.
Because he's a gin on the rocks guy.
He stops in the car once in a while in the winter. Like he used to stop in. He'd come in for Will he be here for our NHA meeting?
Yeah.
Who's taking back one for that? He stopped in and have a burger and stuff. Yeah, good. How'd that go?
It was. It was 4 days of racing.
Awesome.
It's really different.
It's there's they have there's it's hard to get the continuity of it. There's like it's not. You can walk down Main Street and kind of go down East Wharf, but it sort of breaks it up a little bit. It's beautiful. I mean, there's areas that are so nice. And did they take down Christie's? That place Christie's? Big old restaurant.
Yeah, and then you go off in the 4 blocks there, Main and Drag, and it's like trash.
Right. Weird.
Nobody knows that for 5 years without. Okay. Well, they tested. Yeah, it was because they're doing.
You want
this?
Well, the thing is that from the process in school, whatever it comes up.
Yeah, this was even more so. They went back quick. Schools, but they were full closed.
But that's a good.
You're going to have pros and cons. This one
We had to go over and talk to Josh.
No, everybody has an opinion.
Take the issue around the fire station and multiply it by 10. Now you got.
It has to be done in order to clean it up.
This is going to be a big one.
Maybe like its own time.
Yeah, maybe the biggest one we've ever seen. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
run up the ground. Running up the ground.
The windmill.
Let's look at the law. He does, and just came over and over again.
Yes. If you bother to read,
The trouble is just to have two different people away from it. That does speak to how you structure it.
Yes. They were right over there.
It's all good though, right? Once you get in there and clean it up.
See, now it's the new baseline. So you can only look good. That's true.
It's true. Anyways, so who knows? It's this big. I did get your email and I apologize for not getting a copy. I'm going to have to know. I'd like to actually.
I can't believe, I'd be the most shocked person.
I wrote down all the different entities that they
He said, Bob said to me, something even better, that's a little substantial.
So we didn't want any more. So much else.
That's why.
I got
Yeah, we
Previous white people. People said, sure about 4.
Well, I did talk, I think I told you this, but maybe I didn't. I was with Melanie, my attorney, on Monday and Tuesday, and we just.
He's an expert, not me. I think I have a financial question.
We did call.
No, but, I mean, that's why I asked this today. What is it? Well, you want to take care of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, see.
We did try.
Unless it doesn't sound.
Hi.
Everybody happy? Oh, they found you happy?